Welcome to my very first edition of Trucker Spotlight. I am Trucker Ray. Today we're going to be talking about pre-trips and post-trips, and I have the best guy to talk about this because he's so meticulous when it comes to cleaning his truck, pre-trips, post-trips. He knows every detail about his truck. He remembers license plates of trucks he had 10 years ago. I don't know how he does it, but he's got an incredible memory. And the reason why we're talking about pre-trips and post-trips, basically, it is, I think, one of the most abused things in our industry that truckers do not do. I can't tell you how many times I've been at truck stops where I've seen a guy get out of his truck first thing in the morning. He'll go into the truck stop, get himself a coffee. He'll come back to his truck. And I literally watch to see what they do in the morning. And he may walk around the truck. And the reason why I'm saying I don't see a lot of women that do this. A lot of the women are very, very, very meticulous when it comes to their pre-trips. So way to go, ladies. I don't think I've ever seen a lady do this, but most of the time it's men that do this. Maybe they'll walk around the truck. Maybe. But a lot of the time they just get in, the lights come on, they may warm it up. Maybe during that time they're doing their 5-minute pre-trip on their e-log and they leave. And this is a huge disaster because how do they know that their tire is not flat somewhere on their trailer? So they're on their way down the freeway and all of a sudden they're noticing that their tire on their trailer if they look in their mirror, is coming off the rim. Now they're pulling over to the side. They realize now they have a flat tire. This was flat probably overnight. So this is a huge problem because now they got to call breakdown. This is now endangering the life of the guy who's going to come and fix that tire because now he's got to fix that thing on the side of a freeway somewhere, which all could have been avoided if you would have just went to your tire first thing in the morning. Or a lot of the time, those tires are flat even when they come into the truck stop, and if they don't do a post-trip, they're not going to do a pre-trip. So unfortunately, this is what we have to deal with in our industry right now. And all of it is absolutely due to a lack of training. So I couldn't think of a better person to bring on board to discuss this. And that is my good buddy, Barry Late. And Barry Late, welcome to Trucker Spotlight. My friend, you are in the spotlight.
Sweet. That's awesome. Well, thanks for having me on board.
Yeah. So first of all, right off the bat, have you observed that too whenever you go into a truck stop? Do you watch for that? Do you see, I wonder if he's going to do a pre-trip?
I don't really have to watch for it because I see it happen all the time.
Yeah.
It's just a normal occurrence in this industry. And unfortunately, there's just too many people that are in a rush. They just want to get in the truck, turn the key, fire it up, and they just leave. I see it all the time. Like, even with the carrier that I work with, we do have a few bad apples in the bunch where they have a tendency of just check the lights real quick, thump the tires, make sure the trailer is hooked up, and just hop in the truck and they leave. They don't bother to check the wheel nuts. They don't bother to check the airlines. They don't bother to check the undercarriage of the trailer. There's a lot of things that they don't do that they should be doing, but unfortunately, they just don't. They're always in a rush. They're always in a hurry. They just want to get the freight delivered, get it offloaded, or get it loaded, and just get on the road and just go. It's too bad. It's a very, very sad situation that our industry is in when we have a lot of drivers that possess the license, but they don't take pride in having the license, if you know what I mean.
So would you blame a lot of that on just a lack of training?
A lack of training, a lack of common sense for those that have been properly trained, and the people that
laziness.
Yes, a lot of laziness is involved, but there's also a lot of people too that just don't have the patience. Especially when you have drivers, depending on the kind of fleet that they're on, there's a lot of drivers that can go through 2, 3, 4 trailers in the run of a day on an average shift. Take myself, for example. You know that unfortunately I don't have the same trailer all the time. So when I'm doing a post-trip on one trailer and then hooking up to another one to do a pre-trip, it does take time. You know, you're looking at an average of 5 to 30 minutes, depending if you find an issue with the trailer to begin with. And then the time it takes to go to the shop, find a mechanic, discuss the issue, get the repair done to the trailer. And depending on the issue with the trailer, you're either going to be dropping the trailer and getting a different one and having to start all over again, or your dispatch could say, no, we want you to wait until that trailer is repaired before you can go out on the road. And a lot of people just prefer not to do that. If they find an issue that they think is a minor but could turn into a major, they could have downtime on the road. Call out a service mechanic, get a hold of your call center. There's a lot of things that can go wrong for a driver if they don't take the patience or don't have the patience to take the time to get something repaired before they go out on the road. But you and I, we've been in this industry for a very long time. And I'd say between the two of us, we got well over at least 3 million miles under our belts. And we see this everywhere we go. It's a common occurrence. It's unfortunate, but it is a common occurrence.
What do you think is abused more, the pre-trip or the post-trip?
Pre-trip.
Yeah.
Pre-trip. Yeah. The reason why I say the pre-trip, because for a lot of people, the post-trip is non-existent.
That's true.
Yep. It is not.
That is very, very true. I mean, at the end, well, even a short post-trip, when it comes down to walk around your truck and make sure there's nothing leaking, thump your tires, put that lock on the back of your doors, that's all part of your post-trip, right? Securing your trailer, securing your load. And I know you do that too. At the end of your day, you probably lock up your trailer with your lock if you don't have a high,
I do.
If you don't have a high security seal. Yeah. So yeah, and you're right. It is non-existent, and that is really important. Get out, and I don't see it either. I mean, I agree with you. When I go to truck stops, I see guys pull in. They don't go around and thump their tires or nothing, and they go inside and they do whatever, and they come back. They come back with their Subway or whatever it is. So you're right. You're right. It's non-existent.
I had a driver at a Petropass truck stop over in Grenfell, Saskatchewan. This was about 10 days ago, not quite 2 weeks. And I observed this guy come in, and he was with a very, very large carrier. I won't say the carrier here on YouTube, but it was a very, very large carrier, bigger than us anyway. So, you can take that for what it's worth. He came in, the lights on his tractor were working, and he just nonchalantly came across the parking lot, backed into a stall, got out, went inside the truck stop. And I'm watching this guy, and I'm watching, and I goes, he's got to notice this sooner or later. Came back out to his truck, hopped in his truck, and he went to go drive away. And when he pulled out of the parking lot to get onto the service road in front of the Petropass, as you know where that is, I actually ran out and I flagged him down. And I said, and of course he looked at me like the deer in the headlight look. And I was like, dude, you got no lights on your trailer. None. 8:00 at night. His truck was lit up like a Christmas tree, but his trailer was as black as night. He gets out and looks. Oh, like it was no big deal. I'm like, dude, you're hauling a trailer down the highway, and you literally have no signal lights, no running lights, no clearance lights, no marker lights. And when he went out to get out and looked, what had happened at some point throughout his shift, he doesn't know when, but he must have made a turn too tight. And when he made the turn too tight, he literally ripped the nose plug off the front of his trailer. And here he was. Yep. I asked him, I said, where were you coming from? Eli, Manitoba. I said, where were you starting out from? Kenora, Ontario. Oh. So from Kenora, Ontario to Grenfell, Saskatchewan, at some point, and of course, you know Ontario better than I do. But from Kenora, Ontario to Grenfell, Saskatchewan, at some point, this guy ripped the nose plug off the front of his trailer, and here he was, 8:00 at night, driving down the highway, no lights on. And he's actually lucky no one called the cops to report it and have a cop stop him and, let him know what's going on, but at the same time, give him a citation.
So he drove almost like 650 miles with no lights on his trailer.
No lights on his trailer, man. Couldn't believe it.
So he ripped the pigtail right out of the trailer?
Yeah, he did. Yep, the whole thing. Yep, they had to call out a service mechanic and what he did is, instead of pulling back into the parking lot here at the Petro, he pulled into that open area that's across from the Petro where the turnpikes, where they do their switches. He pulled in there and had to shut it down there and wait for a service mechanic, or his dispatch get a hold of a service mechanic to come out. And it's things like that I see going up and down the road, and I just shake my head. I was like, man, like, why do you even bother to do this job?
And you know something? You probably have seen this too. It wasn't that long ago, probably a few days ago, I seen a truck and a trailer, and I don't want to mention the carrier either, out here in the U.S., driving down the road, and you can see the rubber on the back of his trailer just flopping around. And I'm like, I'm behind him. And I'm wondering, how long is he going to figure, how long is it going to take? There's no reason why you can't see that if you look in your mirror. That's another thing. Guys aren't looking in their mirrors. He should see this. You can see it flopping. I can see my mud flap sometimes on my trailer moving around. So don't tell me you can't see a tire that's doing this. I was behind him 5 to 10 minutes and he just wasn't figuring it out. And I'm figuring I got to get around this guy before that tire comes off and ends up in my grill. So I got up to him and I got his attention. He looked at me like, hello, like he thought it was a greeting or something. I'm like, I'm pointing down and he looks, and finally he figured it out right away. He pulled over. But my goodness, it's just like you said, people aren't paying attention to it. It's crazy. And unfortunately, it is, in my opinion, a lot of it is just a lack of training, especially we're supposed to look in our mirrors, every 6 to 7 seconds? I mean, it's just a regular thing. This is something you learn in driving school.
And it is. And you're absolutely right. Now, for myself, I mean, because I've been doing this for so long, but I mean, at the same time, it doesn't matter how long you've been doing this job, you still can't take it for granted. Doesn't matter how well you know your truck or how well you know your trailer, depending on how long you've had the trailer. I sometimes do it. I'm usually 15 to 30 seconds in between looking in the mirrors. But when I first started out in this industry, oh yeah, you better believe it. Like every 5 to 10 seconds I was looking in the mirrors. I probably spent more time looking backwards than I did looking ahead. But but as time went on and you feel more comfortable in your job and you feel more confident in your job, 15 to 30 seconds is about average to look in your mirrors just to make sure everything is copacetic and staying in behind you when you're going down the road.
Yeah.
Well, I got one for you, and actually you knew about this one. This was not this winter we're in now, but the winter of last year. When I had that axle fire, that wheel fire catch on me there when I was coming into Kindersley, Saskatchewan.
Right.
I was leaving Red Deer, going to Kindersley. I was doing a delivery the next morning, and I was going eastbound, but I had a westerly wind. So here I am trudging along. I think it was 15,000 pounds in the trailer. And I'm trudging along, minding my own business, looking in the mirrors. No, everything is all good. No problems there at all whatsoever. And when I got up to the first set of lights from Kindersley, now, for those of you who don't know, from Red Deer to Kindersley, it's 246 miles. So it's about a 4.5-hour drive. At some point after I did the brake check, about an hour and a half into the trip, so from the brake check to Kindersley, you're looking at about 3 hours. And I'm getting into Kindersley. And as soon as I get to the first set of lights, all of a sudden I had smoke rush right up on both sides of the trailer, completely enveloped the cab. And I'm like, what in the world is going on? I looked in the mirrors and I see flames shooting out from under the trailer. So I got through the first set of lights, pulled over to the side. I had people pull over to see if I need any assistance. Had an RCMP officer pull over to see if I needed any assistance. I get out with the fire extinguishers, both fire extinguishers that I had at my disposal. And here I am. I got flames shooting out from under the front axle of the trailer. And what had happened was that a wheel bearing went. And when the wheel bearing went, or excuse me, not the wheel bearing, my apologies, wheel seal leaked out all the oil, enough to cause the heat, enough to cause a fire. But when you're going down the road, you didn't see that in your mirrors because the smoke was coming out directly under the trailer, out behind the doors, and you didn't see the smoke until you were stopped.
Right.
And it's a crazy situation to be in. Like, you do your due diligence to do en route inspections when you're going from point A to point B, but there are times, doesn't matter how many times you look in your mirror, when you have that bit of a unique situation happen, it can get pretty scary when you realize that something like that is on fire. And thankfully we had the fire extinguishers and we were able to extinguish the flames and get the trailer repaired. Actually the next day we actually get the trailer over to the side of the highway, let things cool down. I was able to continue up the service road to the McDonald's that's right there in front of PV Mart at the east end of town. Got the load delivered, went to the mechanic, and we ended up removing all the tires on the lead axle of the trailer, chain up the axle, and that's how I was able to get back to Calgary to put the trailer out of service. But again, I can't emphasize it enough for a lot of people. Pre and post trip and even en route inspections are absolutely paramount. Absolutely.
Yeah. You make a very good point. The en route inspection is very important. Because something could develop on the way, like you said. I mean, you can even have a brake seize up a bit. I have, and you probably have this too. If you don't, I'm shocked. A heat gun. Well, it's not a heat gun, but it detects heat. It's like it just points a little laser at, you can point it at your hubs and it'll tell you what your temperatures are. And there'll be at times where I'll just grab it. It's in my little thing there, my organizer on my passenger seat. Just pull it out and go by, and just check it all the way around. And if one's a little hotter than the other, you know, or should I say, if one is really, really cool, then you know, hey, wait a minute here, maybe those brakes are out, right? Because they're not really working. All the rest of them are the same temperature except for one. And that's something as well that the scales have. They have the detection sensors at the scales where they can see if your brakes are hot or cold. So an en route inspection is vital. It really is, because you also want to check the integrity of the load. And I'll tell you another one here. This one's really amazing. I can't remember where I was. This was very, very recent. Oh yeah, I think I was down in Washington. I was picking up apples, and I had to make a really tight turn to get into this loading area. So I backed in, everything was fine, and picked up my load, did my thing, and I'm, maybe I'm a little bit OCD with this, but I always check my pin. I check it several times just because I try to get into the habit of looking under there to make sure that pin hasn't dislodged. I even go back to check the teeth on the fifth wheel to make sure that isn't dislodged, especially if you're sliding your axle, right? You just never know. You never know. So I head out and I'm heading down to a scale, and it's about 5 miles down the road. I pull into the scale, I get out, and the glad hand is just hanging literally off of my red line. It's hanging there. Just a bump or another turn, that would have popped off, and the brakes would have just locked up right when I'm going down the road, which is never a pleasant thing. So again, I could have easily missed that if I would have just walked out, did my scale, and left. But something made me look at all those things: the pin, the fifth wheel. I also wanted to make sure the pins were in there where I slid the axles, because I had to slide the axles a little bit for the scale. But I don't know if most guys would have even have noticed that there. I'm not saying I'm perfect or anything, but because I looked, I was able to probably avoid a serious disaster, because you certainly don't want to be going down the road at 70 miles an hour and your trailer wheels lock up on you. That's no, now you're driving wherever you're going with square tires. So, I mean, I don't know if you've ever encountered anything like that, but that's scary.
One I would compare it to is, there's a carrier that you and I both worked for back in the day. I won't name the carrier, but this carrier came up out of, it left Montreal. The trailer left Montreal. It went to Air Ontario, and then it done an LTL. And then from Air Ontario came to Winnipeg. And then from Winnipeg, it came over to Calgary. Now, the trailer was ended up going to Abbotsford. So when the driver hooked up to the trailer in Calgary, after it was an LTL going to, well, ended up in Abbotsford. When the driver did his pre-trip, and I'll give him full credit for this, and thank goodness he did. Check the insurance is good. Check registration is good. Now, here is where it gets funny. The CFIP was done only 10 days before he took the trailer. So he looked at it. It was all legit. Got under to do his pre-trip, and he immediately put the trailer out of service. You want to know why? When the trailer had its CFIP done over in Montreal, it went from Montreal to Toronto, Toronto to Air to Winnipeg, Winnipeg to Calgary. No brakes on the front trailer or on the front axle.
Wow.
The shoes were there, but when the mechanic put everything back together after he completed the CFIP, he forgot to put the drums on.
Oh, man.
So here was the lead axle on this trailer from Montreal to Calgary going through all
Wow.
this, going through all the scales, going through, I would imagine, at least 4 different drivers. 5, you want to include the one out of Calgary. Brand new brake shoes, all brand new parts, but the mechanic forgot to put the drum back on the axle before he put the wheels on. So yeah, you got all new brakes, but brake drums are no good if you have nothing for the shoes to stop against.
That could have been very
Yep.
disastrous.
Yeah. 38,000 pound load coming across country, and the only
Wow.
brakes you had was the brakes on the back axle. I couldn't believe it. It was incredible. It was amazing.
That is
And I think
incredible.
that just goes to show the lack of common sense and patience and outright arrogance and ignorance, as far as I'm
I'm,
concerned,
you know what? I'm really
when they do a
surprised that the
pre-trip.
driver didn't notice it, because when you don't have when you have certain brakes that aren't working, you can tell that like something's not really slowing me down the way it should be. You should almost notice that.
You would, but when you know yourself, when you're coming up through Northern Ontario, and as I know full well, coming across the prairies, a lot of drivers don't use their foot brakes. They just use the engine brakes. And
Yeah.
you don't use the foot brake until they really, just about come to a stop. So if the driver in Calgary hadn't caught it, can you imagine what would have been like to haul a 38,000 pound load with only 50% of your braking power going over the Rockies to get down into Hope? It
Wow.
would have been a very, very, very terrible situation to be in. But anyways, kudos for the driver that did catch it
Yeah.
in Calgary, and ended up putting that trailer out of service right away. It just goes to show that there are a few people out there that do take the time and have the patience
And
and the
use their
common
head.
sense and
Yeah.
use their head. Exactly. But there's a lot out there, Ray, that doesn't. I mean, we see it all the time.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's a lot of steering wheel holders out there. These guys, and a lot of them drive the trucks like they're little sports cars, and
Yep.
just not really taking it very serious about look at how much weight I'm pulling behind me here and making sure everything's up to par. Um, all right, Barry, let's put you on the spot. All right, I want you
Uh-oh.
to give me
Uh-oh.
a scenario. Okay, you're starting your day. You're Let's just say your truck's been sitting for about a week. Say you went on vacation to visit family, and your truck, you
Okay.
come back to your truck. Your truck's been sitting for a week to 10 days. You're picking up, then you're going to be pick. Or let's just say that the trailer you're also picking up is right next to you, but you're not hooked to it. What is your
Okay.
routine? What do you do that you would recommend to anyone watching would be a proper pre-trip that would be safe?
On my truck or just any truck? On just my
I'm just
vehicle?
saying for you,
Okay.
what would be your routine when you would, yeah, let's
My
use your
daily
truck as
route
an example.
my daily routine, but if you want to use me as an example, come back from vacation, then right off the bat, once I get my gloves on, I pop the hood. And first thing I do on my truck, anyway, all my fluid levels are on the driver's side. So I would check the dipstick, check the oil. I also check the power steering. I would also check the steering shaft to make sure that there's no slackness in the steering shaft going down to the power steering box. I would also check all the hoses for the air to air to make sure all the clamps are nice and solid. There's no issues with the air to air. Look down in behind the tires rather, and make sure that I don't have any bubbling on the sidewall of the tires, as I unexpectedly did there a couple weeks ago with that blowout on that steer tire. Come around to the other side. I would check the radiator fluid, make sure the radiator fluid is topped up. I would also check the washer fluid to make sure that it's topped up and ready to go. If not, then I would just simply get out all the jugs that I need and just top up all my fluids. Check the inside of the steer tire on the passenger side. Just give the engine a good once over, make sure there's nothing loose, nothing vibrating. Just a general overview that I'm satisfied with, that everything is good. I would actually even stand on my tires and check the conditions of my wiper blades. If the truck's been sitting for 8 to 10 days, just
Mm-hmm.
check the blades, make sure they're good. Close the hood up, and then what I would do is I would fire the truck up, let it idle for about a minute, and then I bring our RPMs up to about 900, and then turn on all my lights, turn on my hazard lights, and As I'm doing my 360-degree check around the truck, I'm checking all my lights, mark lights, signal lights, headlights, fog lamps. I'm checking the fairings on either side of the truck to make sure they're nice and tight. There's nothing loose. I have guaranteed I'll have my hammer with me. So I'm thumping all my tires, make sure my tires are good. Looking in behind the tires to make sure I don't have any leaks on the wheel seals. So I don't have any oil running down the inside of the tires. I check all the wheel nuts, make sure all the wheel nuts are nice and tight. I would check the railings on my fifth wheel to make sure that it is secure. The dog pins are in, so that way the fifth wheel doesn't move. Check the lines on my glad hands, make sure they're all nice and copacetic as they should be. Walk around, check my mud flaps. My truck has chain rack hangers because, of course, I do run the Rockies on the odd time. So I would definitely check my chain rack hangers to make sure they're nice and tight. Check my chains. And then once I'm done with that and I'm satisfied that my truck is good and ready to roll, I don't see any leaks under the truck, like oil, coolant, anything like that. Get the truck, move it, get up under the trailer, make sure she's nice and snug with the kingpin. Get out, make sure that on the front of my fifth wheel, I have a pin that sticks at about 6 inches. So when the fifth wheel, or when the jaws rather, makes connection with the kingpin, my fifth wheel pin goes all the way in, so it's snug against the front of the fifth wheel. I would get up under with my flashlight, look inside the fifth wheel, make sure the jaws are snug around the kingpin and there's no slackness. Once I'm done with that, give it a tug test. It doesn't hurt to do a tug test just to make sure that the jaws are secure around the kingpin. Then I would go and hook up my air lines, hook up my electrical. Now, everyone is going to do things a little bit differently when it comes to a pre-trip of the trailer. Now, what I do personally, and now I don't know what the official rule and reg is on that, but what I do personally is that once I do a tug test and I hook up the air lines, I immediately get in the cab and I release the trailer brakes because I want to check a couple of things. First and foremost, I want to make sure that I have a proper seal between the glad hand on my tractor and the glad hand on the trailer. If there is any air leaks, any audible air leaks, I can deal with that right away, whether it be take it off, put it on again, maybe make it snug, or actually just last week, I had to replace 2 glad hand seals. The seals themselves were just simply worn out. So I just went ahead and replaced them. Once that's done, then I would crank up the dolly legs. And while I'm doing that and checking the lights, checking the CFIP, checking the insurance registration, make sure that the CFIP is current, make sure it's not expired. That's given air time once I release the trailer brakes to go down the full length of the trailer, down to the reservoir tanks, start building up air pressure in the tanks, as well as release the air to the brakes on the trailer. I would then go check my tires on the trailer, make sure the trailer tires are good, make sure, they're proper depth. Get in under the trailer to see if there's any wheel seal leaks, oil running down the inside of the tires. I would check my rails that the bogies slide back and forth on to make sure that none of them are bent or cracked. Any of the cross members under the trailer, make sure none of them are bent or cracked. Check the condition of the dolly legs, make sure the dolly legs themselves are perfectly fine. They're solid. They're not shaking, under the stress of the weight of the trailer, especially a loaded one. I check the wheel nuts on the trailer, make sure, if it's a tandem axle, just check all 4, make sure they're all good. Some of the trailers that I would have a see-through glass so that I could check the hub oil in the glass to make sure it's of a proper level. If not, then I would just go to the shop and just get them to top it off for me. Airbags. If it's an air ride trailer, check the airbags, make sure there's no audible air leaks under the airbags. I would also check the push rod stroke to make sure that they are within specs after release. I know on some trailers are different. Even some carriers even have their own preferred measurements. But by general rule of thumb, for us, if you have a short stroke trailer, it's usually 1/4 of an inch to 1 3/4 inches.
Okay. Before you go on, if someone runs into a scenario where that's off, how do they rectify that?
They got a couple of options. If they find that measurement is off as per specs, they got two ways to do it. Now, for me, if I found a brake stroke that was off by even so much as a quarter of an inch, first general rule of thumb is you do a 6-pack. And then I would hop in the truck, bring our pressure up to 120 psi until the air compressor kicks out, or the governor, I should say, kicks out the air compressor. Shut the engine off. What you're going to do is you're going to put your foot on the brake, and you're going to hold the brake hard. Now, right off the bat, she should lose about 1 pound to 3 pounds of PSI, because now the air compressor, the air system itself now has no extra air coming in off the air compressor. So right off the bat, you're going to start losing some air pressure.
And usually on the first one, you hear you can actually hear it go clunk, 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 clunk. You can hear it adjusting.
Yeah, you can. Do your 6-pack. Once you do your 6-pack, put your foot on the brake, listen for the air. She'll drop about 3 psi. Hold that for about a minute. Release the brake for about 10 seconds. Put your foot back on it again till it gets down. By this time, she should go down to about 100, usually about 100 to 105 psi. You can keep doing that off and on until, as long as you keep the key in the on position, she'll get down to about 60 psi, and then you'll hear the audible alarm kick in that you're now running into low pressure. Fire the truck back up, build up air pressure, let it get back up to 120 psi. And then once you're done that, and the governor kicks in to shut off the air compressor, go back under the trailer and look and see. If the stroke on all the rods have come back into spec, then you're fine. If your 6-pack doesn't work, then if you're in a yard, go let your mechanic know, let your shop know. But if you're out in the field, like let's just say you're picking up a trailer from a distributor or warehouse, or even if you're picking the trailer up doing a switch with another driver, and the driver failed to notice that, then yeah, I mean, call your call center or call your dispatcher, let them know what's going on. You've done a 6-pack and it's not working. One thing I don't recommend, because unless you are officially qualified as a heavy duty mechanic, get under the trailer, and I think it's a 7/16. Manually adjust the brakes yourself. However, that is only if you are a certified, qualified mechanic to do so. But for drivers like myself, I'm not a qualified mechanic.
Yeah.
Therefore, by law, if I got pulled into a DOT scale and they found out, that's not a good situation to be in.
Yeah. So just so people know what Barry was mentioning, if the 6-pack, basically you're pressing down on the pedal, you're waiting, you can hear it adjust, but you're more or less doing this. That's why they call it a 6-pack. You're doing this 6 times.
Yes, by the time 6 times.
By the time you've done the 6th one, you're literally your air warning will come on, and then you,
absolutely,
like Barry said, you just let it build back up. And a lot of the time, that's also included with your pre-trip anyway. So
it is, yeah, it is. It is part of your pre-trip. I do it on every single trailer that I do, and I'd say 1 in 5 trailers I do find that the brakes are out of adjustment. Now, the fleet that I run with, we have automatic slack adjusters, but it's not 100% foolproof either. There are times it doesn't matter about the automatic slack adjusters, and it doesn't matter how many times I've done trailers where I've done 2 6-packs back to back, and I still can't get the brakes right. So I would have to go over to our shop and get them to manually adjust it for me to make it legit for me to go down the road. But there are a lot of drivers that don't do that. There's a lot of drivers that just simply don't know how, for that matter. But if you have if you're hooking up to a trailer that has a short stroke brake pot, general rule of thumb is usually 1/4 of an inch to 1 3/4 inches of travel. If you have a long stroke on your brake pots, then it's 1/4 of an inch to 2 1/4 inches of brake stroke, or of brake pot travel on the stroke coming in and out of the brake pot. And a lot of the trailers that are run today, they usually run with the short strokes. But either way, I do have a measuring tool that allows me to measure the stroke travel once I release the trailer brakes, and I've had to do it 2-3 times over just to make sure it is right. Once I'm satisfied that the brakes are properly adjusted and good to go, then I continue my pre-trip. If we're hauling a trailer that is an LCV trailer, which is an A box that has a pintle hitch and extra air lines at the back of the trailer so you can haul a second one behind it. I check all the components there to make sure they're all good and tight. There's no air leaks. I'll come out from under the trailer and I'll look up and I'll check my clearance lights to make sure they're working properly. I check the condition of the doors, the hinges, the door handles. I'll check the tail lights, make sure my hazards and my signals are working. Check my license plate light. Check the reflective stripe that goes across the back of the trailer for when you're nighttime driving. And then I'll just come up the other side and check everything on the other side. And then once I'm satisfied that the trailer is properly pre-tripped and ready to go, then I just start my day.
Okay, so the question is, if you've done a thorough inspection like that on your truck and trailer,
yeah,
you really don't really need to go that thorough on the post trip. It's more of a visual and thumping your tires and on your post trip. Would you not agree? At the end of your day?
Yeah. At the end of a long day, you know, when you put in like 600 miles, for me on a post trip is just basically everything but getting under the trailer and checking the stroke or the brakes. That's pretty much it. Everything else I check. I do recommend, however, that I still get under the truck and trailer real quick just to see if I busted a wheel seal. There have been a couple of times in my career after putting in a long day and I want to shut down for the night that I've had to make an SOS call to a call center because doing a post trip, lo and behold, I've got oil all over the inside of my wheel and down the tire and I got a wheel seal. So what I thought would be just a 5-6 minute post trip, I'm now up for an extra hour or 2 hours because I've had to call out a service mechanic to come and service the truck and the trailer, or the trailer rather, because of a wheel seal. People just take it for granted. They just get out, walk around, thump your tires, check your lights, everything's all good, hop in the truck, go to bed. I don't do that because I've learned in the past that is something you don't do. It's better to get up under the truck and the trailer and check something like that before you go to bed instead of getting up in the morning and you're doing your pre-trip and you got oil everywhere and you don't know where the heck it came from. And now your 15-minute pre-trip to start your day has now turned into a 2-3 hour job. So I always practice, never procrastinate. And just be thorough on a quick post trip. It only takes 5-6 minutes, and then once you're satisfied, then yeah, shut it down for the night, go to bed, call it good.
Yeah, and equip yourself with a really good flashlight. I'm sure you got a good one. This is
I do.
A little flashlight. This thing's tiny, very very small.
I got one just like it.
It's got a little clip. It'll go right. Does this one come with a little? Like does it have a charger that it drops into?
Yeah, I got mine at Mark's Works Warehouse. There in the
what's the brand?
Aisle section there. What's that?
What's the brand?
Dakota.
I don't even have my glasses on. I can't tell. But anyway, very very bright little flashlight. I mean,
it is.
It is super bright. It'll light up everything. You just put it on your cap, walk around, double check everything. So basically, what I was curious about, in your opinion, on a trailer itself, what is the most neglected thing that people check on a trailer? I want to see if we both agree on this.
The most neglected thing that people check on a trailer?
Yeah.
I'd say two things. Number one, a lot of people check to make sure that the trailer is still hooked up to the truck.
Yeah.
And number two, checking the brake pots and checking wheel seals under the trailer, because a lot of people just don't either. And with respect to a lot of drivers out there, I've seen some drivers that are well over 300 pounds, and they cannot physically get under a trailer to get up to the axles to make sure that their brake pots are working properly and they don't have a busted wheel seal. That's my opinion. I'd say that two things neglected by most drivers is making sure that the trailer is still hooked to the truck and checking the brakes and wheel seals up under a trailer. How about you?
Agree. Yeah, I agree. And I would add one more to that, and that's the documentation, the paperwork. I can't tell you how many times, especially like that paperwork has changed obviously every year when the insurance is renewed on the trailer, and you'll have in the dock holder or in your little, whatever they call it, that little thing that you put your paperwork in there.
We just call it the tube.
Yeah, yeah. Well, some have the round one, some have the tube,
Yeah,
but
we got
and
a few of those.
it's
Yeah.
basically where your documents are, document holder, for your insurance papers, and that to me is a huge one that a lot of people miss because how many times have we, and I bet you would agree with me, have looked in there, you've checked the paperwork just shortly after paperwork has been renewed, and you
Yep.
find expired paperwork constantly, and with Transex, when I was with them, they had a system or they had kind of a little thing, and I do believe they still do it, where they will put what is it, a little yellow tag or something inside of sometimes the tube or other places to see if anyone finds it. If they do, they get a gift certificate or Tim's card or something to prove that they actually checked for the paperwork to see it was okay.
Actually, I found three in the month of March last year, and I got a brand new jacket.
There you go.
I did. Yeah, no, I did. I got a brand new reflective yellow safety jacket. Says Transex here on the side.
Yeah.
There was one, and the first one, and you're absolutely right. You're 100% right. The first one was actually in the tube. As soon as you pop off the cover and you go to pull the information out,
Yeah.
And it's basically this. It's all it is a yellow seal, like a yellow door seal you put on the back of the trailer, but it's stamped. Says Transex on it, has the seal number, and then on the other side, it actually has the date and time that the tag was actually put on that particular trailer. So on the first trailer, it was in the tube. The second trailer, it was up under the front axle above the return air line to the reservoir tank. And then the third tag was just inside the passenger side, because some of our trailers, and I think your trailers are the same way too. The side skirts that go down the trailer. The third one was inside the dolly leg. But no, I found three tags in 1 month, and because of that, not only did I win, I won the jacket, but yeah, no, I did get a $10 Timmy's card. So it's little things like that, that just kind of,
Okay.
you got to find ways to make sure that drivers are still doing their jobs properly.
When you found, like, let's say, for example, the one in the tube, when you found that little yellow seal, how long was that sitting in there before anyone found it, which was you?
6 weeks.
That's still too long.
Way too long.
Way too long.
Way too long. Yeah, 6 weeks.
So
yeah, that was. I don't know. I can't remember for the second and the third, but I do know the first one was like 5.5 weeks, almost 6 weeks. Yeah.
And you know what? I kind of understand why people don't check that. They assume it's okay. They may be able to see through the thing and they can see paperwork in there. But there's been several times where I've opened it, and like I said, there's paperwork either been missing, you see the paper bag in there, or it's drenched, it's soaking wet because
I've had that. Yeah.
Water is dripped onto it, and now you've got all this. You get pulled into a scale for a level 3 or a level 1, and they want your documentation for your truck and your trailer, and you go back to get the stuff out of your trailer, and there's nothing there, or it's expired, or it's soaking wet. You're going to end up with a fine or something because you did not do a proper pre-trip. Because if you did, you would have known that paperwork was either expired or you couldn't. Like, how are you going to read it if it's mush, right? So,
yeah,
I've seen it. I've actually had it one time when I was at CHP. I got a level 3, and the guy says, "Can you please grab your paperwork, out of your binder and the trailer?" And I had checked previously. 2 days before, and the paperwork was expired. I went into the office. I know it's a pain. You have to walk into the office. They printed out a new one. I put it inside there, and long and behold, 2 days later, I end up in California, and I got inspected, and the guy asked me to look in there and grab the paperwork. If I wouldn't have checked it, it would have been expired, and I know for a fact I would have ended up with some kind of a citation or something because I didn't check it properly.
I've had several instances myself, especially with the winter time. Now you get get a cold day one day, and then the next day it's warm and things are thawing out. Where I found pulling stuff out of the tube, and my CFIP paperwork is wet, or my registration is wet. So what I do is I try to unfold it as best as I can, and I'll lay it inside my truck and just let it dry as I'm going down the road. The only thing I need to remember is when I get to my destination and I'm dropping the trailer, I just got to make sure I fold it back up and put it back in the tube for the next driver.
Yeah.
But I haven't been in a situation yet like you have where, you got wet paperwork and you try to dry it out. Or in your case, you went to the office, get new paperwork, and then only just a couple days later, you get pulled in by the DOT. That hasn't happened to me yet. But there are instances where, I would find paperwork that is just wet. And it's just simply wet. I mean, you can easily unfold it and it'll dry out. But there have been times I've had to go to the shop and get all brand new paperwork because, like you said, it could be just
read it.
mush. You can't read it. No, you can't. I have actually had a situation there just before Christmas. I was hooking up to a reefer to go to Regina, and there was a mix-up in the paperwork. So when I checked the paperwork to make sure everything was legit, it was paperwork that belonged to one of our heater units. Completely different unit number altogether. The insurance was good. The CFIP was good. But the registration belonged to a heater unit. And here it was, I was hauling a reefer. I'm like, okay, I don't know if someone done that on purpose to see if we caught it or not, but anyways, it was a mix-up. So yeah, and there's nothing more embarrassing that to get pulled into the scale and here you were with the registration to a completely different trailer opposite of what you're hauling.
And you said that you really haven't had that happen to you, and you got a less of a chance of that happening in the areas that you drive because there's not a whole lot of scales. You might deal with Balzac, right? I don't know how many scales you really deal with. But when you're down in the U.S., Washington State is meticulous about it. California, Arizona. I mean, every time I come back in from Mexico, we're going through an Arizona scale, and the guy walks up to you and he makes sure, he says, if you got a sticker, he'd let you go, if you've already had an inspection. So they're really on you down here, which is good. I mean, they should be. So it is extremely important, people. Check your paperwork, make sure. And another thing too, part of your pre-trip, I would say monthly pre-trip, is go through your binder and make sure all your paperwork in there, all the paperwork that's in your binder, and make sure it's up to date. Or even go into your safety department and ask them to check it every 6 months and make sure nothing's been expired. It's very, very important. So I think
it is. Yeah. I mean, especially the binder. I mean, if you're running a very large fleet or a small fleet, like Key West compared to Transx, you need to make sure like your insurance, your registration, your CFIP, your cab card, and then of course all your applicable permits that you need when you're running from state to state, depending on the commodities that you're hauling. You need to make sure all of those permits are both A, up to date, and B, even just in your book. But a lot of the drivers, there are too many drivers out there that just simply take this industry for granted. They think everything is there for them in the truck because it's supposed to be. And when they get pulled in at a scale to do a level 1, 2, or 3, and they're looking for the paperwork, well, I can't find it. Well, driver, didn't you check your paperwork before you left? No, I thought it was already here in the truck.
That's not going to go well.
Bad business practices. Business practices. So I just wish that a lot of drivers that are in this industry would treat it more of a career and a lifestyle than just simply a job.
Yeah. I agree with
you. It's very unfortunate that the industry that you and we dedicate our lives to is still, surprisingly, even after all these years, is still not considered a legitimate skilled trade. It's sad.
Well, at one point in time, we used to be called professionals, and they still call it, professional, truck drivers professionals, but it's not really like that anymore because sorry?
No, honestly, we use the word professional because we take pride in the work that we do, whether, everything from the work that we do personally to make ourselves look as professional as possible, right down to the equipment that we drive. But there are a lot of people out there, they wear their jogging pants, their sandals, their flip-flops, their dirty t-shirts, their hair look like they got electrocuted.
And they're talking on their headset while they're walking into an office, or they're not paying attention to what's really going on.
And even right down to the overall shape and condition of the truck in general, whether it be your company driver or you're an owner operator. I had this discussion with a friend of mine just recently. And I actually asked him two questions. I said to him, I said, tell me two things. Number one, if you had an electrician, a plumber, a pipe fitter, a carpenter, a heavy duty mechanic, a chef, and a hairstylist, just those jobs alone, what is the one thing they all have in common? And he looked at me and says, I really don't know. He said, they are all officially recognized, legitimate, skilled trades, and rightfully so. You can go to a skilled trades college and do the course and graduate with that field of trade that you want to do. I said, what's another thing you have in common? And he thought about it and said, actually, I don't. I said, they can all go get and receive the Red Seal certification, which basically says that you are the best of the best in your field of trade. But there's one other thing, too, they have in common. They all have to rely on the trucking industry to get their food, their scissors, all of their equipment, their tools, everything that they need for them to do their field of trade to a warehouse, a distribution center, wherever the case may be, but they have to rely on us to get it there.
Right.
And we ourselves are responsible for a truck that's worth a couple of $100,000, hauling a trailer that can be worth $100,000 to even a couple of $100,000 if you're, doing oversized loads, hauling large, heavy, oversized equipment. That is hauling a commodity that in itself is worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. I mean, you and I have hauled loads in our trailers that are worth anywhere from 50 to 250 grand.
Yeah.
We're responsible for knowing as many rules and regulations as possible from province to province and state to state. All the rules that come down from the CTA, the ATA, the FMCSA, the CARB, the EPA. We work 7 days a week, 365 days a year. We work anywhere from 10 to 14-hour shifts up into a 70-hour cycle, depending if you're in Canada or the US.
Mm-hmm.
We are one of the most criticized, characterized, plagiarized, politicized jobs in the industry, but yet we cannot be considered a legitimate skill trade. Now, why is that? I mean,
I don't even have an answer for that.
We're supposed to be held to the highest level of standards compared to that of an airline pilot.
Look at the training alone that we go through just to get the license.
Well, now that depends on where you were.
BC, it's very detailed in BC.
Yes, but back in the day before the Humboldt accident, the rules were pretty relaxed right across North America. There are places. Well, I'll give you an example. I mean, I didn't go to a certified trading academy when I got my Class 1 license. I did mine in-house with a carrier. Now, lucky for me, because my stepdad, as you know, he's 83 years old. He's still driving today. He got well over 6 million miles under his belt and counting.
That's crazy.
I got a lot of good advice and experience from him. I also had very good friends at the carrier that I was working at that showed me the ropes right down to the most professional detail as possible. And because of that, I was able to properly get my Class 1 license. Not everyone is as fortunate as I am to get it in-house. There are people that would, spend the $10,000 and go to a certified truck driving school to get their license. But unfortunately, and you know this just as well as I do, there are a lot of people out there that do find a backdoor or a loophole to try and get their license as quickly as possible, which is pretty much the equivalent of a 5-year-old getting a prize out of a box of cornflakes. And it's true. Unfortunately, it is true. I mean, I'm not trying to be disrespectful in any capacity.
No,
but unfortunately, it is true. There isn't enough enforcement and training, even since the Humboldt tragedy. I still think the rules today, because of the mentality of the people that we have coming down the pipe to be a Class 1 driver, it is very, very different from people who were a Class 1 license getter back in, say, the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And even back then, people who got their Class 1 license back in those days, you were the best of the best. You were the creme de la creme, and you were very, very much respected. You were very appreciated. People back then didn't take the trucking industry for granted because they knew how important it was to have their goods and services delivered to them on a daily basis. But today, with advancements in technology, the mentality of a lot of drivers that simply take this industry for granted.
Absolute lack of professionalism.
Big time. Big time. I get disgusted when I see people walking across the parking lot with dirty clothes, flip-flops, sandals.
They throw their garbage out of their trucks before they leave. They can't even put it in a garbage can.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I've even been at a customer where I've seen drivers strapping down a load on a flat deck, no safety vest, no hard hat, no steel toe boots, but yet they're working around loads of pipe, heavy equipment, anything else, strapping the loads down or chaining the loads down, not one piece of safety equipment on. I just shake my head. It's like, man, if you got hurt, you be done.
And you know what? It's just as much the shipper's responsibility. They got to get out there and police this stuff and say, come on, put on some, PPE. What are you doing?
There's a lot of places that do have strict enforcement rules when it comes to their property, because the last thing they need is an incident to happen on their property where now WCB is going to get involved.
Right.
And they don't want that. So I will give a lot of shipper receivers credit where credit is due, but there are some shipper receivers where it's like, hook up your freight, chain it down, strap it down, and just get out of here. I got another guy coming in.
Yeah. And you know what, Barry, I will say this, that I think even when I started driving, which was only 13 years ago. I mean, I haven't been on the road as long as you. It was more professional back then than it is now. It's decreasing at a ridiculous rate. And
my dad says it all the time.
Anybody and their dog can get a Class 1 license, and they're driving down the road and they look like, you drive by them, their hands are like embedded into the steering wheel. They've got their foot up on the dash, right? And they look like,
I see a lot of that.
Yeah.
I see a lot of that, especially in the Rockies.
Yeah,
I see a lot of that. I mean,
yeah.
you and I, we see that as a common occurrence in the Rockies. You get passed aggressively by a guy who's been tailgating only 20 inches from the back of your trailer.
Every time.
Pull out and pass you on a double solid yellow line.
Yeah.
And you look over to see the driver, and here's the driver, big smile across the face, head bobbing up and down, and their left knee or the left leg is up right on the seat or on the door. And not a care in the world. And I just shake my head. It's like, is this what we have become as professional drivers?
Well,
it's sickening. It really
unfortunately,
is sickening.
You've got law enforcement, CVSC and law enforcement, the sheriffs out, in Alberta, right across the country, and a lot of places in the US as well.
Yeah.
They're not cracking down on this stuff. I mean, if I am a law enforcement or I'm a commercial vehicle inspector and I'm driving by and I see some guy with his leg up, with his foot up on the dash, I'm sorry, I'm pulling this guy over. Like, what kind of stature is that? Like, what are you doing? It's time to do a level 1, buddy. Let's see what you know about this truck. So they're not cracking down on it either. It's like they're just looking the other way. I'm sorry, but maybe there are some out there that are, but maybe there's just too many drivers out there. They don't have enough, they don't have enough people to do it. But we see stuff constantly that just makes you shake your head. Like you said, guys tailgating each other. Like, I take the 93 through Nevada all the time, and you got guys like this close to the other guy. I'm like, I get on the radio. I'm like, buddy, if you get any closer, man, just hook up a little hook there and just put it in neutral and you're on your way, right? You won't have to use any fuel. It's just ridiculous. And you will see police that see this and they don't do nothing about it. I'm like, my gosh. So the best thing to do when you see someone, folks, you see someone on your tail like that, if you're a new driver, just slow down a little bit and just kind of move over to the shoulder. Let the clown go around you, because it is so dangerous and it makes you so nervous when you see somebody on your tail like that. And you can be guaranteed, that guy didn't do a proper pre-trip on his truck if he drives like that.
No, there's too much. There's not enough professionalism and too much impatience in this industry.
Yeah,
it really is. And you're actually partially right when you said that there's a lot of us out here simply because That's the way the economy is. The economy needs us to just go, 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 move, move, move. But there's always a back and forth tug of war. You got the economy pulling us one way because they need their freight like yesterday. But then you have safety pulling us the other way, saying, you need to take your time and do this. This cannot be a rush job. If you guys expect and demand to be recognized and respected as professional drivers, then you need to play the part. Right. You need, if you expect to be held to a standard of that of, say, of an airline pilot or a cargo ship captain or a locomotive engineer, then you need to be professional. Don't act professional. You need to be professional. There's a significant difference between the two.
Yeah, it's not like you're driving an Uber or a taxi down the road. You are hauling around 80,000 pounds a lot of the time.
Exactly.
It's like a locomotive going down the road. I mean, you really got to take it a little bit more serious.
Absolutely. I mean, even a locomotive engineer, from a certain standpoint, I mean, they're operating. They can operate one engine. They can operate 6 engines.
Yeah.
Depending on how long they are, and they themselves also have to go through a lot of towns, a lot of communities, a lot of cities.
Yeah.
Where safety is absolutely paramount, and they too are expected and demanded by their federal rules and regulations that they are to act as professionals as well. It's no different. We have to do the same thing, whether you're hauling one trailer, you're hauling 2 trailers, you're hauling a very, very large piece of equipment, say like a large mining truck of some kind. We all have to be safe out here, because at the end of the day, we all want to go home safe to our family and our friends.
Yeah.
But you can clearly see the difference, though, on a daily basis, the difference between a commercial truck driver and a professional trucker. You and I, we see it all the time. Even our friends that are also drive for a living, they see it all the time as well. And unfortunately, because of the way the economy is evolving and the way that the industry is evolving, my opinion, respectfully, is that we have way too many commercial drivers out here on the road and just not enough professional truckers.
Yeah, I agree with you.
We don't. No.
Well, my friend, we're coming up against the clock.
Sounds good.
Did you want to finalize with a final thought on maybe some encouragement to those that maybe they're new to the industry, and just a final thought on maybe some encouragement to those to make sure that they do that proper pre-trip and post-trip, that it's going to really be for their benefit and everyone on the road?
My encouragement for someone who's either a veteran in this or someone who's new coming into the industry, if you really value your life, if you really value your family, your friends, and you still want to see them every time you come home on a trip, it only takes 15 minutes in the morning, maybe 5 to 10 minutes during the day, and 5 to 10 minutes in the evening out of your whole day. That's all it takes. If you want to make sure that you are getting from point A to point B as safely, efficiently, and professional as possible, do more than just act as a professional. Be the professional. Check your truck. Check your trailer. Because at the end of the day, it is your responsibility to make sure that you are safe out on a public road, sharing the road with other people. It is your job. You're the one driving the rig. It is your responsibility to make sure that you and those around you are safe to go from point A to point B, because at the end of the day, we all want to go home.
Well said. Well said. Well, Barry, pleasure as always to interact with you. I mean, you've got a ton of knowledge, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted you on here discussing pre-trips and post-trips, because I think we were talking about this not that long ago, how much it's abused and people just don't do it. So thank you very much for your professionalism and your dedication on the road. And we'll have to do this again. Maybe we'll talk about something else exciting. And I hope you have a wonderful time. And thank you for joining me on Trucker Spotlight. I really do appreciate it.
You're very welcome, my friend. Take care and God bless.
All right, friends, there you got it. There you got it. The very first edition of Trucker Spotlight. Join us next time and we'll do it again. Bye for now.